Hello and welcome to the Tough Girl Podcast, a 3-time award-winning show that aims to motivate and inspire you while increasing the amount of female role models in the media, especially in relation to adventure and physical challenges. I'm your host, Sarah Williams. If you're passionate about adventure, challenge and learning from women who have overcome obstacles and achieved remarkable things, then this is the podcast for you. Every Tuesday at 7 a.m, new episodes go live featuring incredible women who share their stories, insights and tips to help you achieve your dreams and goals. You can support the Tough Girl mission by signing up as a patron. Visit Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl Podcast. Keep listening until the very end as I share more information about what's going on with me with Tough Girl Challenges, give shout outs and recommend other Tough Girl Podcast episodes. More information can be found at toughgirlchallenges.com.
My name is Robyn Godfrey, and I currently live in Wilmington, North Carolina in the U.S. I'm a marathon runner. I'm a certified running coach. I'm a speaker, and recently just became author of a book called Running the World, and it's about my journey through running all the world marathon majors. I didn't start running until I was about 47. And before that, I was more of a party girl than an athlete. And I kind of had a reckoning on a business trip one morning when I woke up really hungover, probably even still drunk from the night before. And I felt terrible about myself. I felt ashamed of myself and I wanted to make a change. And for some reason that I really can't explain to this day, I went to the hotel gym and I got on a treadmill and I started running for 30 seconds. And I was, sweating profusely and ready to jump off. But that 30 seconds really started a transformation in my life that took me to running all the world marathon majors. And along the way, I faced some serious life hurdles. My husband was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. I had a few injuries. We had a couple natural disasters with the pandemic. We had a hurricane, and we even had an earthquake. So a lot of trials and tribulations throughout the journey. But I think through it all, just having that story about being kind of reinvented and proving that it's never too late to chase after whatever dreams that you might have. And sometimes it just starts with 30 seconds.
When you were younger and growing up, did you have any background in sports or athletics or PE or, what were you like when you were growing up?
Oh, I was extremely clumsy. I was very tall for my age when I was growing up, and so I was gangly and skinny, and I really had a hard time controlling my arms and legs until I was in my 20s. And so I tried out for sports, and I just didn't have the eye-hand coordination to be able to play like basketball or volleyball. And so I really was very social, and I wanted to be a part of a team, but I just didn't have any athletic ability at all whatsoever. So I didn't do any sort of sports, or I did a little bit of running here and there did some track when I was in middle school, but it wasn't until I was much older before I started my running journey.
And you mentioned that it was at 47, that's when you decided, to make this change in hotel gym and, that 30 seconds started that transformation. Was this, I don't know, it was like the straw that broke the camel's back almost? Like, had this been something that you felt was you were thinking about more and more, just in terms of, look, actually I'm getting older now, I need to look after my health more? Was it just I know it was that point, but was there a build up to suddenly when it's like, no, actually this is enough now, I've actually got to take control?
Well, I was always active, and I was always, doing things outside, playing tennis, even though I was not very good at tennis, or riding my bike. But I think my biggest problem was my profession at the time. I was in sales, and, I love sales. It's a wonderful profession to be in. And I was very social, and I like to be out with people. I like to go out to dinner. I love to drink, wine with people. But these things can turn into an every night affair when you're on a business trip. And sometimes it would just be too much. And I think what happened that morning when I woke up in that hotel room was I felt ashamed that I couldn't stop just overindulging. I just wanted to be social and be around people, but it didn't always have to involve drinking and eating. And so I think for me, it was just a moment in time where I looked at myself and said, I don't want to feel terrible like this anymore. And when I went to the hotel gym and got on the treadmill and started running, I felt better. And I think, I didn't change overnight. I still was, doing some of the same behaviors, but I started to have this thought in my head that you can feel good. You don't have to feel terrible, and you can be social without it involving overindulging, 5 nights out of the week. So I think that was kind of what was going through my head was, when I got on that treadmill was you can feel better. You don't have to feel like this.
How did you continue? So, you've taken the hard step, even just getting out the door, getting onto that treadmill, doing the 30 seconds. But then, coming home, it can sometimes be very easy because it's like sometimes that before I go to bed, I have the best intentions for the following day. I've got my to-do list written out. I know in my head, I'm going to be the most productive person you can imagine when I wake up tomorrow. And then tomorrow I wake up and all that motivation has died a death, and I hit the snooze button again, and then I pick up my phone and I start scrolling, and then suddenly it's 10 o'clock, and then I have some breakfast, and then it's like, oh my God, the whole morning's gone, and I haven't done my yoga, and I haven't been to the gym. So how did you help develop that transformation? Was it, did you think, right, I need to get support with this. I'm going to get myself a personal trainer. I'm going to get myself, a coach, a running coach. I'm going to join the gym. Like what were the steps that you took to continue that transformation?
I think it was kind of all those things that you mentioned. When I first came home and I went to the gym again, here locally where I live, and I got on the treadmill again, and I thought, well, I wonder if I can go further. I just wanted to kind of explore what could I do? And then I started running outside, and that was a completely different experience. As now we all know how we feel about treadmills. And when you go outside, it was like, okay, well, now I'm outside, and this is my favorite place to be. So it started with a prompt, and it kind of came out of nowhere. And one of my friends asked me if I wanted to run the Cooper River Bridge Run down in Charleston, South Carolina. And I never thought about doing something like that. In fact, I didn't even know how far a 10K was. I had to, Google that. But I decided if I was going to do it, and if I was going to do it, I was going to do it like a real runner. I mean, that's kind of my personality is I don't do anything halfway. And so I literally trained for a year to run 6.2 miles, which sounds so crazy to me now, but I went from running 30 seconds. I had to build it up. I had to get to where I could run that far. And I went and ran that race, and it was an amazing experience. It's a very well-supported race, but you run up and over this bridge. It's fairly steep bridge over the Cooper River in Charleston. And then once you crest the top of the bridge, then it's all downhill and into the streets of historic downtown Charleston, which were just completely packed with people cheering for you like you're in the Olympics. And I was hooked. I was like, this is amazing. I mean, all these people out here cheering for me. This is the best feeling in the world. And I just absolutely fell in love with that feeling of I'm just an ordinary person out here running a race, and all these people are thinking, wow, you're great, you're a runner, you're doing this. And I just loved it. The energy and the feeling of accomplishment when I was finished. It was my PR for a really long time, actually, in the 10K. And so I just fell in love with that feeling of accomplishment and just being proud that I stuck with it and did it. But I think any time that you are embarking on something that is going to change your life, it requires that prompt, because motivation is not enough. Because like you said, it comes and goes. You have other things kind of enter your life, and other things take you away from your goal. And it's not that you don't want to do it, but there's distractions. But when you have that prompt there that kind of says, okay, this is something that I want to do, this is an end goal that I want to achieve, then it's a little easier to get more focused.
Yeah. I mean, talking of end goals, with your new book, Running the World, A Runner's Odyssey of Struggle and Triumph in the World Marathon Majors. Tell us more about when you started getting interested in marathons and you started thinking to yourself, 26.2 miles, like that's a little bit further than the 10K, 42K. How did that start?
Yeah, I think it started for me like it starts with a lot of runners. You do various distances, and the following year after the 10K, I did a half marathon, and I absolutely fell in love with the distance. And I I signed up for 4 more the next year, like a complete maniac. And I joined a running club here where I live. And, of course, everyone's doing, ultras and marathons. And it just seemed like such a long way to go and such a long way away from where I was at. But people kept asking me when I was going to do one. And I just wasn't sure that I could actually run that long and that far. And of course, you're out on a run one morning and we're just, chatting about amazing places, to go run. And we were talking about, doing New York City, how amazing that would be to run in the 5 boroughs. And then somebody mentioned London Marathon. And it just really stuck in my head because I have always wanted to go to the UK. I was obsessed with every bit of history and literature and all things British when I was growing up. And the thought of running the London Marathon just seemed like an amazing, amazing goal. And I was turning 50 the following year, and I thought it just kept coming up in my head. Wouldn't it be amazing to run the London Marathon for my 50th birthday? And Marathon Tours, which is a local, or not local, but a national tour company here in the U.S., they had this 100-person lottery that they don't ever do this, and they just happened to do this one year. And it was for an entry into the London Marathon. And I'm sure, as you know, it's very, very difficult to get into the London Marathon. And so they had this 100-person lottery, and you would go through their tour company if you won a spot. And I threw my name in, and I got a spot. And I had no idea what I was doing. I was scared to death. I don't know how to train for a marathon, but luckily I was in this running club and I had all these people with experience all around me. And so I started Googling, I started asking people for help. And the next thing you know, I started doing these, 15, 16-mile long runs on the weekends. And I ran the London Marathon in 2016. And it was amazing. I absolutely had the most incredible time. It was so rewarding. The crowds were incredible. The fancy dress was, hilarious. I just had a ball, and I just wanted to do more of that. And I loved the distance too. It was hard and it was challenging, but I loved it. And the structure of marathon training really fits well with my personality. As a sales rep for many years in my career, you have to break down your goals into small, simple steps. And that's what I did with marathon training and also with racing, is just breaking it down into manageable, simple steps and goals that I could achieve each week that really helped me to get ultimately to where I wanted to go. And, I'm not a fast runner by any means, but I really enjoyed the process of marathon training and then the actual race itself. And it was everything I hoped for when I ran in London. It's still my favorite marathon.
Yeah, it's a great race. I've done it like five times, way back when. But I think this year something like 1 million people applied for the ballot, and it's which is. And it's like, I think 56,000 people crossed the finish line at London or something. It's just, it's such a phenomenal achievement. And just like you say as well, the cheering crowds and seeing the historic London sites.
Yes.
But, I'm sure each of the, Tokyo, Boston, London, Berlin, Chicago, New York City all have their own joys and triumphs and special memories from it. One of the conversations I've been having a lot recently with friends, especially around sort of training, is especially when you have a job, you're working in sales, and then to commit to training for 26.2 miles. And obviously I know it's different for every woman, but I'm really interested in how you made it work for you. What did that look like for you? Are you one of these people 4 a.m. starts? Are you, doing back-to-back races? Is it run clubs twice a week? How did you, make it work for you and your lifestyle?
Well, it was all of the above. I belonged to a run club, and so that really helped a lot with, long run training, having a group to run with. Other people were training for other races because London falls, a week after Boston. There was a lot of people training for Boston or Big Sur and other races. So that was helpful on long run days. But, in sales, I was traveling for my job all the time. And so I would have to often, run from, a hotel in a city that I wasn't familiar with, but I found it to be such an adventure. It was so much fun to leave out of a hotel room and go run around a city that I was in before I had to go to my meetings for that day. And I was able to explore all these places that you would never really see in a car, or, maybe driving by so fast you don't notice. But it just became like such an adventure to be able to run in all these different places I was traveling to. And it was funny, I would often carry a fork with me just in case, I got attacked by somebody, and everybody would make fun of me. But, a fork is a great weapon, and it doesn't require any kind of special permission from, TSA security. And so you can carry a fork through security. But yeah, I would just, put my fork in my pocket, and I would, put on my running shoes. And if I was in Chicago, or if I was in DC, or, wherever I was at, and I would go for a run in the morning. And to me, it was so much fun to be able to just have that adventure and get out before having to start my work day. But I also, spent a lot of time, just doing work at the track. And, again, where I live, it's a very active community. So there was always somebody willing to kind of jump in with me and help me get to, through a workout that I needed to do. So it was definitely the help of a lot of friends and fellow runners. And as well, just kind of embracing the adventureness of running. I was new to it. So I was still kind of in that honeymoon phase of, loving to run so much that I was actually running too much sometimes. So it was just kind of joyous way to get through the training.
You mentioned earlier, you sort of said like sort of a party girl and, working in sales, there can be lots of drinking. Were you still drinking throughout this period? Do you still drink now? Or is that something that, because sometimes runners, they can run hard and party harder?
Yeah.
Was that something that,
I didn't make a transformation overnight. I didn't completely stop. I love to drink wine and, occasionally beer, but I found that it really interrupted my sleep. And especially, I was going through like perimenopause and menopause, and it really affected how I felt. And so I would just start kind of watching that more closely. And I wouldn't drink, like the night before a run or whatever. And, I would still have the occasional wine, beer, or maybe a mixed drink, but I cut way back. And I still have, those days where I want to have a couple of glasses of wine, and I just make sure that I kind of do it either during the day. So I become more of a day drinker rather than a night drinker. And I also do it in a lot more moderation now. And I think just being around the people in my envelope now are people who don't really overindulge. And so I think that's helped me a lot to kind of realize I can be social, I can be part of a group, and I don't have to, drink a lot of wine or whatever to do that. I can still have those interactions and it not be about alcohol.
I'd love to hear a little bit more about some of the World Marathon majors, because especially sort of Tokyo, because I've, from a personal perspective, like, I've visited Boston, London, used to live in London, been to Berlin, Chicago, New York City as well. But Tokyo, Japan is somewhere I've never traveled to. And it's somewhere, on the list of marathon majors, I think culturally would be the most different compared to all the other cities. And I'd love to hear a little bit more just about what the experience was like of getting over to Tokyo, being over in Tokyo, what the race was like. How was that experience?
I just fell in love with Japan. I never thought I would visit a country like Japan just because it's so far away, and the language barrier seemed like a lot for me. And I think if I hadn't have planned on doing the world majors, I might never have gone there. And I really recommend going to Japan. It's, even if you're not running the marathon, it's an incredible country with incredible people. It was a long way to go. I flew from where I live in North Carolina to Dallas, and then took a direct flight from Dallas to Tokyo. The next day, we had a 5.2 magnitude earthquake right when we woke up in the morning. So that was our introduction to Tokyo on the first day. And it was, my first earthquake. So that was interesting. But I found the people there to be incredibly friendly, efficient, and very rule driven. So if you are a person who is kind of got that little bit of rebel in you, which I do, it's a very rule driven society. So I found myself with like a little devil on my shoulder and a little angel on the other one saying, you can break a rule. It's not a big deal. And then the other one saying, don't break a rule. You're in somebody else's country. But it's incredibly efficient. And I had never seen a race so precisely organized. And I was with some other folks here from Wilmington, and one of the runners, she's actually the race director for our local Ironman race. And we were laughing because at the porta-johns, they had arrows pointing to which porta-john you should go into, with whatever line you were in. Because a lot of times, you walk up and there's like a row of 30 porta-johns and a bunch of people standing in line, and it's not sure which one you're supposed to go in when somebody comes out. They actually directed us to which one we should go to, which we thought was really charming. There's just a lot of just incredible organization there. Everything is very timely. So if you are 5 minutes early, you're actually late. When you're on a train, if you don't get off the train within like a minute, you will miss your stop. It is just incredibly punctual, incredibly organized. Their infrastructure is just, compared to here in the U.S., it's just incredible. The train system, the bullet trains and all of that. And the race was no different. I mean, it was incredibly well organized, very efficient. I think once the gun went off, I was in wave G maybe. And within 15 minutes, I was crossing the start line. It was very, very quick. Their cutoff times are very, very strict. They actually have kind of like a human chain they form across the course, and those are like the sweepers. And if you are behind that group when it gets to that checkpoint, then you're out. And there are no excuses. There's no, leniency. It's like you're behind that, you're out. And I feel like that's probably very stressful for a lot of runners that may be more in the back of the pack. And I think it's just because locking down the roads in Tokyo for any longer than that is a real challenge because it's a humongous city. But what I found really charming was there was these older Japanese gentlemen on the course that would hold out like a little grocery bag, like a little plastic grocery bag, and they would collect, gel wrappers and, whatever people are eating. And these bags were so small that it had to have filled up in like, just a couple of minutes. But it's just such a Japanese thing that they are just so incredibly neat and tidy that there's no trash on the ground. And they make sure that every cup and wrapper and even like, when you tear off the top of the wrapper, that little piece is, put in the trash. So it's just an incredibly efficient run. And then also just on the streets themselves, there's no potholes, there's no cracks. It's like freshly paved tarmac the entire time you're running. And it just felt incredibly runner friendly for us. And Tokyo is 60% out and backs, the course is. So a lot of people struggle with out and backs because they don't want to see the same, scenery going out and back. And also that, when are we going to turn? When are we going to turn kind of feeling? But I found it to be incredible in the middle of the race. Just there's 6 lanes of road and it's just full of runners from all over the world. And it's just shoulder to shoulder. And I just thought it just gave me chills when I was running the race to think about all the people that were there just filling these streets. And I love that part of the out and backs. But there is a very cruel out and back at the end. You have to run out like 1.95 miles and then you turn and run back that almost 2 miles and then that's to the finish. So that going out that 1.95 miles felt like forever. And then I made the turn and came back. And it was funny, my watch turned over 26 miles and I don't see the finish line anywhere. And it turns over 27 miles. And I'm like, what is going on? And finally, at 27.8, I saw the finish line. And I think it was just because the photographers on the course, were kind of off course a little bit. And so I was veering over to them to, take pictures, and I added on quite a bit of mileage to my race. But it was worth it. It was so fun because they got some great photos. But it was just a really beautiful, well-organized race. When we got finished, all of our bibs are color coordinated, and you go to this, the color where your bib is, and they put your, the Tokyo robe on you, and they give you your snacks, and it's just extremely well organized, and they're very kind and smiling throughout the whole thing. And I just loved it. I just felt like the people there, really embraced running. They were all out there cheering for us and just it was a great day. I really highly recommend that race just to experience just a completely different culture and a completely different environment than anything that we have here in the U.S. And I've only run the 2 races in Europe, but they were very different from, the European experience too.
What are you like recovering afterwards? Like, does your body, especially, being over 50, menopause, are you still recovering pretty well? Or are you having to do more stuff on the recovery?
Well, I actually really have amped up my strength training quite a bit. I've always been kind of a gym person, lifting weights here and there, but I really amped it up in the last probably 5 or 6 years, lifting heavier. I did some Olympic lifting for a while, which is, pretty complicated and intricate. And I had a really good coach that I worked with. But I spent a lot of time working on strengthening my core and getting my body into just a better conditioning wise, as far as, just weight training and mobility. And I have found that my recovery time has really improved. I mean, I still feel, wrecked after a marathon, but I don't have to, I don't feel so wrecked that I can't do anything the next day. So I think just doing the mobility work, doing the weight training work, I have actually increased my weight training to 3 to 4 days a week now, just to keep my strength up, because, we're losing lean muscle mass all the time. So trying to keep that from happening at a quick, slowing that down a little bit and trying to keep my muscle mass as high as I can. So I just turned 59 yesterday, and, getting older, you're definitely feeling those aches and pains more. And so for me, just keeping up at the gym has been a game changer.
Yeah, and do you think I would like second that? Like, so I strength train. Actually, I've just done a mobility session today with my PT. But strength training for women is just so important. Like, I'm sure I've mentioned this on previous podcasts, but I think once I heard, like, after the age of 35, women start losing muscle and it gets replaced by fat, and I was just like, ugh. But it's
Yeah.
just strength training is just so important. Especially for like your bones as well, bone strength as well.
Hmm.
With running, there obviously, there is the physical side of the running, the training, but there's also the mental side, and showing up when you don't feel like it, but also during a race. And I'd love to what does that look like for you in terms of having that mental resilience, that grit, that determination? Have you got any examples that you can share?
Yeah, I think what happened after I did London. And I decided at that point to go after the World Marathon Majors. A friend of mine was doing it, and I thought it sounded like a great goal. I'm a very goal-oriented person. And to me, there is just nothing better than reaching your goals. When you reach your goals, it just feels like you're a winner. And so that really drives me. And I know that not everybody has that kind of personality. They may not be like competitive. Like, I'm competitive with myself, not necessarily with other people, but I really strive to be successful, and I'm extremely goal oriented. And I think for me, that's what happens when I get into a race is I know that I can mentally get through this because I'm strong, and sometimes physically my body doesn't want to do the things that I want to do mentally, but knowing that the prize at the end is, getting that medal or getting to the next race or getting the 6-star. I did an ultra last year, becoming an ultra marathoner. All of those things just kind of go through my head when I'm out there, when it gets hard, is, you can do this. You're a strong person. You want that medal. You want to get to the next level. You want to achieve this goal. And I think that's what keeps me going. And I think we're all stronger than we know. When we get in these situations, we are definitely stronger than we think we are. It's just a matter of kind of like mind over matter, really, and just getting yourself into that position where I can do this. There's nothing that I can't do. And I've never had a DNF in a race, but I've come close. And I think just being able to adjust to the mile you're in when you're in a race, if you're not having a good experience, if it's not what you hoped it would be, and this is, if you're not having an injury or anything like that, this is just, a mental issue, change it up, start walking or, do run walk or do something else, but realize that it's just a moment in time. It doesn't mean the whole race is going to be like this. And I learned that lesson the hard way in Berlin. I had a very bad race there and I panicked. And I think when I panicked, I started to just kind of break down and thought, this is going to be horrible. This is going to be awful. And I think I would have had a lot more fun if I would have been, okay, at the next rest area, I'm going to get some more water and I'm going to, towel off with, it was really hot that day, get a towel and cool off a little bit. And I'm going to kind of regroup. And I just never did that. I just panicked the entire time and I ended up having a terrible race. So I think just realizing that if you're having like a downturn in a marathon, which you will, that it's not going to stay that way forever. Run the mile you're in, get through it, make a change if you need to, and just keep going. And things will turn around. It's amazing how many times that's happened to me since Berlin, and I've really learned that lesson to run the mile you're in.
Yeah. And I suppose, you mentioned at the start that actually during this sort of running journey that you've been on, you've been dealing with a lot of different challenges, from your husband's cancer diagnosis, hurricanes, pandemics, wildfires, earthquakes. There's been a lot going on. And I suppose for people out there who are listening, who are maybe dealing with setbacks or something's happened in their life or their partner's life, and actually they are going through that difficult time. What have you learned from running that you've been able to apply to those challenging situations?
I think running has saved me a lot in some of those very challenging situations, but I don't think you can expect running to save you from everything. You need to get help when you need help. And I think that was a very important lesson I learned when my husband was going through his ordeals, is that running saved me for a while, and then there was no saving. Running couldn't save me forever. I needed to actually seek out help. And I think it's important to remember that you can run and run and run, but you can't really run away from everything. And when it came to, the pandemic, I think all of us suffered mentally during that time. It was, a very stressful time. We were very disconnected. It was just unusual for human beings to be in that situation, and being able to still go out and do my runs. And I would run with maybe a couple of people. That just really helped me a lot to keep my mental focus in place and just kind of keep my sanity going. But it was a very disappointing time. Everything was getting canceled. Everything was going away. I was supposed to do Boston that year, the first year in history it had ever been canceled. And it was tough. And I think allowing yourself to grieve for that and to be disappointed. And I would often think, well, this is just a first world problem. There's people out there dying. And it was true. They were. But it's also still awful. It's okay to feel bad that everything was being taken away and everything was being canceled. Even though it may not be as detrimental to, somebody passing away from COVID, it's still a disappointment. And I think it's good to recognize that, because those things started to pile up after a while. It was years of dealing with the pandemic and everything just kind of, canceling or changing. And I think, it's just important to acknowledge that yes, there are very serious things going on in the world, and that's terrible. And there was people that, were in my family that were passed away because of COVID. And so it hit everyone. But it's also important to remember that we can be disappointed about the things we wanted to do or couldn't do because of it. And that for me really helped to kind of ground me and make me realize I shouldn't feel guilty for being disappointed about this. And I shouldn't feel like I can't be angry about that, because I was. And I was angry about what was happening to my husband. And I felt guilty that he was sick and I was healthy, and why should I be mad? But I was. It had changed our lives. And I think coming to terms with the fact that it's okay to be mad that life isn't turning out the way I wanted it to helped me kind of refocus and say, okay, life may not be the way I wanted it to be, but that doesn't mean it has to be bad. How can we move forward?
It's interesting, that word guilty, especially for people who, you still have your goals and your dreams that you're working towards. But obviously, especially with your husband, you want to be a supportive partner. Did you feel guilty for taking time out for yourself? And were you able to get over those feelings of guilt and be like, actually, do you not know it's okay to prioritize myself and make sure that I have time out for me so that I can actually be supportive in other ways?
Yeah, I don't think I ever felt guilty about taking time for myself because I knew I needed to do that in order to be strong for him. I had more guilt around the fact that I was healthy and he wasn't, and I felt terrible about that. If I could have taken that away from him and put it on myself, I felt like I could have, you know, handled it better, dealt with it better if I was the one that was sick, and so I had that kind of guilt. But I also realized early on that, if you're a caregiver, you have to take care of yourself first because then you are strong enough to take care of whoever it is in your life that is sick or is going through something. And I learned that very quickly that I could not really be the person I needed to be, the wife I needed to be for him without kind of putting myself first and as far as, making sure my mental state and my physical state was taken care of because I had to be his rock. And in order to do that, I just really had to focus on that and make that a priority. And I did not feel guilty about that. I did feel guilty about being the healthy one, though, for sure.
How was it after completing your goal? Did you suffer from sort of like in the adventure world, it'd be called like adventure blues, but you've been working so hard towards completing the World Marathon Majors, and then you finished it, you completed this goal. What happened after? Like, did you get the blues, or did you already got like the next race booked in and thinking, yeah, actually, I'm going for an ultra now?
Well, that's exactly what happened. The latter is I kind of unknowingly, when we planned it, my friends and I talked about doing this ultra, and I didn't really think about it being, a couple of months after Tokyo, which was my last world major. But yeah, we had planned to do this ultra marathon in southwestern Virginia, and it was in May, and Tokyo was in March, and so I didn't really have a lot of downtime to think about, okay, I've achieved this big goal and now I've got to, figure out what I'm going to do next. The ultramarathon was kind of staring me down when I got home from Japan and I needed to start getting my trail shoes on and training on trails so that I could conquer this, 50K with a lot of elevation and I live in an area with no elevation. So I didn't really have a lot of time to get the blues and I didn't really plan it that way, but it actually worked out really, really well because I was pretty fit from training for the marathon. So the distance wise wasn't really that hard for me. And then we just started, working on trails and getting some elevation in, traveling, further inland into North Carolina to get, more hills and more elevation going. And we just kind of jumped into that and trail running is just a whole different beast, compared to marathoning. And so I was kind of immersed in that. And once we finished the ultra, I did have a little bit of a come down after the ultra, but I don't think it would have been nearly as bad if I hadn't planned for that ultra. Because coming down off the world majors would have been really tough, I think, without something else kind of on the horizon.
So you're 59 now. 60
Yeah.
is next year, big
Maybe.
birthday. Have you got anything planned or any goals that you're working towards in either for the 60th, whether it's running a 60 miler? Just planted the seed.
I actually do not have that on my bingo card. No. It's interesting. A lot of people ask me, what are you going to do next? And because I did do a triathlon in the midst of all my marathoning. I did a couple triathlons and I really enjoyed those. But I don't really have like a huge goal out there of, what I want to do when I turn 60. I want to keep marathoning if I can. My knees are definitely troublesome and give me a lot of issues, but I'd love to do the Marine Corps Marathon here in the DC area. I would love to do Sydney, now that it's been added as a seventh world major. Not so much because it's the seventh world major, but because I just think it would be an amazing experience. I've never been to Australia. The finish line just looks incredible there in front of the Opera House. So that's definitely something that I think about. But for me, I think just running with my friends, going places and doing races is so much fun. We just did a trail race again this past May, and there was probably 25 of us out doing this race. And it was just so much fun being with friends and, just laughing and enjoying ourselves and being in nature and exploring. And, that to me is just the best, and not really having to put a lot of pressure on myself to do anything if I don't want to. So I really enjoy, the trail running and just running for fun. And, I run 3 or 4 days a week here locally with my running club. And, it's still enjoyable. We still have a lot of laughs, and I do a lot of pacing as well. So I do a lot of half marathon pacing, and I love doing that. I love helping people reach their goals, and helping them get a personal record, or if they're coming back to running after having a baby, or any of those first time half marathoners, things like that. It's so much fun to help them reach their goals. And I recently started coaching, and so I think for me it's just kind of maybe shifting and doing different things, but still being very much a runner and out there, probably find a new goal in the next year or two.
I mean, obviously, and one of the goals that you did complete is writing your book. And which was easier, running a marathon or writing a book?
Well, wow, I don't know. That's a hard one. Luckily when I was running all those marathons, I journaled a lot. So I am a person that has running journals, and I write down all my runs, what, the weather was like, how I dressed, who I ran with, what it felt like, all this sort of things. So I have stacks of those from all the years I've been running. And so I had, a lot of notes and things already kind of created. So writing the book actually flowed pretty easily. And the writing part was not really that hard for me. I think just the editing and the going through the process of publishing was a lot of work, but I'm really proud of the result that I've accomplished this book. And I hope it inspires other people to, if you're a runner or not, to just go after what you want to do and figure out how you can change. If you want something to change in your life, you can do it. For me, it started with 30 seconds. And I think that if you start small, and if you set small little goals for yourself and change tiny little habits, you can really change your life. And that's exactly what happened to me.
Absolutely. And Robyn, where can people connect with you, find out more information about your coaching, about your book? Where are you most active on social media?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, and my handle is @beachy_runner. And I'm also on Facebook with my name. And then I'm on LinkedIn as well. And my website is worldmajormarathonfinisher.com. And I'll have all things on there about my book. I hope it inspires other people to go after whatever their dream is, whether it's running or something else. I think they'll get a lot out of it just by reading how, overcoming obstacles and just kind of staying in the moment and staying strong can really get you through anything.
Absolutely. And Robyn, I'd love for you to have the final words of advice, final words of wisdom for other women out there who want to begin as well. They want to take that first step. They want to start. Apart from just do it, what advice would you like to share?
Well, I think with any kind of change in your life, if you're motivated, yes, that helps. But motivation's gonna go up and down. It's going to become strong and it'll wane. You can't just rely on that alone. There has to be some kind of prompt that's going to that will make you want to change your life. And find that prompt and what's going to happen to you that's going to say, okay, I want to make this change. It's going to keep you moving forward. I mean, I have days when I'm not motivated either, but having those end goals in mind and having those friends that help me along the way really keep me going. I think trying to do this alone is tough. So get a community, get people doing things with you, whether it's running or swimming or biking or whatever it is that you want to do, get that community going. And I think for any woman out there, whether you're an athlete or not, strength train. Get in the gym and, get your mobility going and start lifting some weights, and you're going to feel 100% better.
Absolutely. Robyn, thank you so much for coming on Tough Girl Podcast to share more of your story. Really appreciate you sharing your words of wisdom, and best of luck with your new book, Run the World, A Runner's Odyssey of Struggles and Triumphs in the World Marathon Majors.
Thanks, Sarah.
Hey, tribe. How are you all doing? I hope you're keeping super well. We're coming up to the middle of October 2025. Big shout out to all the runners out there who are following their goals, following their passions, getting outside, especially when it starts to get cold and dark. They're showing up for the early morning runs, the weekend runs, training for the marathon, whatever it is that you're training for. I'm very proud of you. Runners, even non-runners, we have spoken to so many incredible women on the Tough Girl podcast who have a focus on running. And I was actually just on the website because I have to say now, because we're over like 800 episodes, a lot of the women who I've spoken to, the episodes sort of start blurring for me just because I'm just interviewing sort of all the time and listening to different podcasts. But I was just scrolling through the episodes that have come out in 2025. And sometimes I forget what I'm producing, which I know sounds really weird. But when you look back and think, God, we've just had so many incredible women on the Tough Girl podcast, just sharing their story. I mean, I actually kicked off the year, reflecting on the Southwest Coast path, talking about health, money and future plans for 2025. And then we've gone on to speak to other incredible women like Naomi Rumble, who's leading by example, overcoming barriers and redefining what an athlete looks like. Freddie Chohan, she's an Adventure Queen grant winner who shared more about hiking the Pennine Way on her first multi-day adventure at 54. Miriam Lancewood, we caught up with Miriam, a life beyond civilization, wilderness living, global adventures and lessons from the wild. Claire McCall has been on the podcast talking about hiking sections of the Hexa, which is, and she also wrote a book about it, talking about adventures, fear and finding joy in midlife. Stephanie Boone, solo hiking on a budget, building resilience and tackling the West Highland Way at 60. The legendary Renee McGregor, world-renowned expert in athlete health and performance, ultra runner and women's sport advocate. She's also going to be speaking at the Kendall Mountain Film Festival, which I'm also going to be attending. Really looking forward to it. We did a catch-up episode with Ali Mahoney, turning 50 with purpose. She shares more about adventure, motherhood, and her hike that she did across Malta. And I mean, to be fair, I haven't even reached August yet, and there's just so many amazing women sharing their stories. So if you haven't had a chance to listen to some of the episodes that have come out in 2025, then please do go and go back and sort of download a few of them. But we have spoken to quite a lot of runners, and there's obviously such a variety with the running episodes. And I think this is what makes running so fascinating. It's, the story behind it, the barriers, the challenges. How do women train? How do they fuel? What are the mental sides of the challenge? What are the emotional sides of the challenge? What works for them? And, every woman is different. We also spoke to the two authors of an incredible running book called Ultra Women, the Trailblazers Defying Sexism Sport. So the authors of that were Emma Wilkinson and Lily Cantor. Again, incredible episodes. And they normally do sort of joint interviews, but I like getting like the two different perspectives on that. So, and I think that's such a wonderful combination. If you listen to Emma and Lily, their different views and journeys into running and even like how they connected. And then if you read the book as well or get the audio book and listen to it while you're running, awesome combination. I think it just fits together really, really nicely. And if you want to hear what I got up to, I released a special episode, the 800 episode, on the 4th of August and share more about 10 Years of Tough Girl podcast, hiking 7,400 miles of adventure and what's coming next, which was the GR10. But honestly, there's just so much, to be honest, there's so many incredible women out there following their goals and their passions. And you are part of that tribe. You are part of that community because A, you're listening to the Tough Girl podcast. You're being inspired by these amazing women sharing their stories. And all I want it to do is to make you think about what is your next goal? What is your next challenge? It doesn't matter what other people think you should be doing. Although I will be saying do strength training. That's very important, especially for women after the age of 30. But all women get strength training, do mobility, do flexibility. But what's important to you? What do you want to focus in on? And there will be resources, there will be information available to you if you want to learn more about a specific area, a specific type of challenge. Just go and visit the resources section at toughgirlchallenges.com, have a scroll through there. And if you're not able to find the information that you're after, please send me a DM. I'm not saying that I will know the answer, but I might be able to point you in the right direction, or somebody who might be able to help, or it might just sort of trigger something in me where I'm like, oh, yes, you need to listen to this episode. That was a woman who was talking about going through a divorce, for example, or another woman who talked about dealing with failure. for example. So I might be able to pinpoint you to the specific type of episode that you will learn from. But I honestly do think you can learn from any of the Women on Tough Girl podcast. Big shout out to the incredible patrons. So the patrons are the women and men who financially support the podcast. And what that allows me to do is to have a regular source of income coming in every single month. But amazing patrons around the world supporting, and you can become a patron as well. Visit Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl Podcast. And just want to say a massive thank you to Becky Wandell for signing up as a patron. It really makes a massive difference just having that support, to be honest. So you can pay it forward as well. If I know everyone's sort of sick of subscriptions at the moment and feel like everything is a subscription, but you can just make a one-off donation. You know, if you are in a fortunate position at the moment, think of it as buying me a coffee or a nice hot chocolate. That would be really, really appreciated. There's also links on my website to a PayPal account, so you can just sort of send donations directly there. That would be absolutely awesome. Thank you again for listening to the podcast. We've got new episodes coming out on a Tuesday at 7 a.m. There will be a couple of bonus episodes coming out over the coming months on a Thursday at 7 a.m. I haven't quite finalised it, but we're going to be catching up with Paula Preet and finding out more about what she's been up to and her next goal and next challenge. So keep your eyes peeled for that episode to go live. And obviously I'll be sharing stuff on the social media at Tough Girl Challenges. So all that's left for me to say is, wherever you are, whatever you are doing, give it your all. Give it 110%. Get after it. Go for it. Believe in yourself, because I believe in you. Take care. Lots of love, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.